Preparations underway in San Diego for Election Day, but county officials say they've already seen a huge voter turnout, and that could impact results tomorrow night.
President Trump and Joe Biden very busy today, making their final pitches to voters in some key swing states on the eve of the election.
And a look at so-called super polling places here in San Diego and what to expect if you're voting in person. ABC 10 News at 11 starts now.
Your voice, your vote. Both presidential campaigns busy today, less than 24 hours before the polls open across the country. Hello there, everybody. I'm Virginia Cha, joined in studio this week by my co-anchor Jim Patton. We'll hear from him in a minute. But first, today candidates are canvassing swing states, making a last-minute pitch to voters. ABC's Faith Abube shows us how some of those races are stacking up and what to expect tomorrow night and in the days ahead in this very unusual election year.
After months of bitter campaigning for President Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden, it all comes down to this: getting supporters to the polls.
The power to change the country is in your hands.
Get out and vote. That's all I ask. Just take a little time and vote.
President Trump hoping for a huge Election Day turnout. The latest 538 forecast showing he has just a 10% chance of winning re-election. The latest ABC News poll shows the race in the Sunshine State is still a toss-up, with the COVID-19 pandemic defining the contest. On the eve of Election Day, the Biden campaign focusing their efforts on Pennsylvania, a state Trump won by less than a point in 2016. Polls show he's up in the Keystone State, despite the race slightly tightening.
It's time for Donald Trump to pack his bags and go home.
In an effort to flood the zone, Kamala Harris heading to eastern Pennsylvania with her husband, while Jill and Joe Biden take on the western half. Vice President Mike Pence and President Trump also heading to the battleground state. Meanwhile, Mr. Trump raising eyebrows with this inaccurate comment.
We should know the result of the election on November 3rd. That's the way it's been, and that's the way it should be.
While news outlets often project a winner before all the ballots are in, vote tallies have never been final on election night. In fact, this year, with a record number of early ballots already cast, the final results could take a while to certify.
Our response is the president's not going to steal this election.
It could take several days to count votes in some states like Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, but in other battleground states like North Carolina, Florida, Arizona, we could get some early answers. Those states expect to have most, if not all, their early votes and in-person votes counted on election night. Faith Abube, ABC News, Washington.
Today is your last day to vote early and avoid the potentially long lines at the polls tomorrow. ABC 10 News anchor Mary McKenzie has been at the County Registrar of Voters office today and spoke to the registrar about the rules and the returns.
In-person early voting started Saturday. It continues today, and at 235 of these super polling locations, each one is designated 100 feet of space so that no electioneering or intimidation can happen where voters are casting their ballots.
What we want from voters is to be respectful of another voter's rights to be able to cast their respective ballots.
And it's the law, which Michael Vu says will be enforced. There are signs clearly marking that space at each polling location. And if there are problems with people refusing to follow the rules, he says they won't hesitate to call in law enforcement. Vu expects there could still be long lines to vote tomorrow, despite record numbers of San Diegans voting early in person and by mail. In 2016, 500,000 people did show up to vote on Election Day. But as we know, this year and this election is very different. Because of concerns about COVID and with the ease and convenience of mail-in ballots, the early returns this year could paint a significantly more accurate picture of the various races much earlier in the night. At 8 p.m., shortly after the polls close.
It could be upwards of 60 to 70% of the overall votes cast.
Versus 2018, when the early numbers reflected just 33% of the vote.
It could be telling. For some, it might show really wide gaps, and in others, it'll show like it's neck and neck.
If you're waiting until the last minute, you do need to be in line to vote by 8 p.m. tomorrow, and your mail-in ballot has to be postmarked by tomorrow at the latest. Mary McKenzie, ABC 10 News.
And this election season also shattering early voting records on the state level. So far, more than 9 million people have cast their ballots ahead of Election Day tomorrow. That accounts for nearly 2/3 of all votes Californians cast in the 2016 presidential election. This year, all registered voters received a ballot in the mail, with the state encouraging people to use them to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Voting officials say they're starting to see an increase in the number of people coming in to cast their ballots. ABC 10 News reporter Marie Cornell stopped by one of the super polling places and talked to voters about their experience.
Normally, people would cast their ballots in smaller locations like people's garages. But this year, they've created super polling locations like here at SDSU because of COVID-19 concerns. If you choose to vote in person, your polling location will look a lot different than it normally does. There also won't be many locations in the county. The county has consolidated the 1,600 small voting precincts into 235 super poll locations. One of these is SDSU. Election officials that help run the polling location at San Diego State say they've already had about 600 people who have come in since they opened Saturday to cast their ballot. Among the voters that felt the need to vote in person is Gianluca Doris, who says key races and issues are what convinced him to vote.
It was a very kind of like an emotional experience as I was walking up. It was like I didn't really expect it to hit me, and then I got here and I was like, whoa, this is the first time actually voting for like the elected leader of our country. And then I came out because I wanted to vote in person to make sure that my ballot didn't get lost in the mail or something.
Election officials are also preparing for possible crowds on the actual day of the election, adding they've taken additional steps to try and keep voters and poll workers safe, which Gianluca noticed.
Very safe, yeah. They had a bunch of plexiglass between us and everybody. All the people have like the face shields on and masks, and there were like X's, lining up where to stand. So I felt very safe in there.
If you need help finding your polling location, go to our website, 10news.com. Reporting from SDSU, Marie Cornell, ABC 10 News.
Quick reminder, ABC 10 News is your source on election night. We will have live wall-to-wall coverage on streaming devices, including Roku, Fire TV, Apple TV, and your smartphone. To watch, just download the ABC 10 News app, or you can go to 10news.com for the very latest on all the races that matter to you.
Search for a coronavirus vaccine continuing this week in San Diego. 2 UC San Diego trials that were put on pause will be running again. These trailers in National City are for the Johnson & Johnson trial, which is scheduled to resume tomorrow. The one that picks up again today will be done using mobile vaccine clinics. Now, both clinical trials were in phase 3, but paused when people started getting sick.
Part of the reason we want people to understand that these are common is they will probably occur again. These are large trials. AstraZeneca, 30,000 people. Johnson & Johnson, 60,000 people. It would be surprising if we don't have another pause.
Now, once it was verified the vaccine didn't cause the illnesses, the trials were given the okay to resume. And if you're interested in participating in either study, we have posted a link with information on our website, 10news.com.
Well, this morning, San Diego police looking for the driver in a hit-and-run crash that injured 2 people. It happened about 5 this morning in Chollas Creek near Euclid Avenue. Our 10 News Breaking News Tracker had the first camera there as crews treated the victims and investigated this crash. Police say the driver of a silver Honda fled the scene after crashing into a Mustang. The victim's injuries, though, considered non-life-threatening.
Right now, local faith and community leaders are calling on gangs to agree to a season of peace, and they're asking for no gunfire from Thanksgiving through New Year's Day. During the Season of Peace campaign, community leaders will lead community walks of peace, offer free meals to the homeless, and host a tree planting in honor of those who have died because of community violence.